One, thanks everyone for being here. This is actually this is a change in a paradigm that Acre is doing that's huge, and you're all part of that. And I think that's really, really exciting. And by the way, that's why I'm here. So just a brief background. This isn't about me or what I do as much as it is about what we're doing collectively as an industry that I've been waiting for a long, long time. So I'll tell you a little bit of a story. I was working, we ran about 4,000 acres, 3,000 or 4,000 acres, all in Southern California, all from Ventura to the Mexican border, all specialty crops, strawberries, you name it, plastic culture, cabbage, we did sweet potatoes, we did, back then in Orange County. And by the way, the brochure says I've been in it in 5 decades. That means that's not possible, but that's okay, because my dad's DNA was probably floating around, and we were 4th generation. But the bottom line was that we had this large operation. We had dedicated generations into the farm. We were the largest strawberry grower at that time in the world. We were then consolidating all of our operations down into San Diego. We had a beautiful coastal plain there. So we had about 1,400 acres in Oxnard. And if you know anything about the growing conditions in Southern California, the Oxnard Plain has some of the best soils in the world. So we had decided, though, that we were going to consolidate in a coastal plain so we could grow strawberries, specialty crops, cucumbers, polyculture, you name it, we were doing it. And many of you won't recall this, fortunately, but because you're younger, but there was a big flood in 1980. Who remembers the flood in California in 1980? Gert? So the flood, which was a 100-year flood event, we had 40 inches of rain. So, droughts come and go. But we had 40 inches of rain. And we were located in an area where the Tijuana River flowed from the Rodriguez Reservoir into the Pacific Ocean. Well, the U.S. Congress approved a flood control channel to take that water from Mexico into the ocean. By the way, that's where you see the sewage deal right now down on the border that everybody's up in arms about. But anyway, so on February 20th of a particular year, and if I tell you the year, then you know how old I am, and we're trying to keep that secret. But what happened on February 20th, beautiful, beautiful day, just like it is right now, they opened the dam, they opened the floodgates on the Rodriguez Reservoir, and within maybe 4 hours, our entire history was under 4 feet of water. Gone, wall to wall, a mile of water from Nestor, which is down on the border, all the way to the Mexican border. So you're stunned. It's one of those events. By the way, that's farming. You talk about risk in farming. We all know what this is. There's risk everywhere. So what ended up happening is I said, I got to get a job. So I made the mistake of suing the federal government. We'd lost everything. There was no crop insurance at the time. And the next 17 years, I was in litigation against the federal government. And believe it or not, we won. We won for flood control damages. So I don't know how many millions of dollars we lost. We lost everything. And what ended up happening is that the federal government decided, and the state and everyone else, they paid us. And I paid off most of the creditors, and I collected $21,000. 21 grand for 17 years' work. So during this period of time, my background a little bit, my dad said, I do not want you to get into farming. Well, I was in it. I was going to be a physician, and everything changed. And so being 10 feet tall and bulletproof at that time in my life, well, look, I'm never 10 feet tall. All right, so it's not going to happen. But what I did is I took the first job that came along with a gentleman, Bob Williams. Kurt, you may remember Bob. Bob was an MAI and ARA and a broker. He was with the coal company, one of the best mentors that I've ever had, and from a farm family. So from that point, actually, during the litigation, up until today, I've been involved in service-related ag industries. So I'm an appraiser, I'm an MAI, I'm also an ARA in a bunch of states, but my real focus is consultation. Did a lot of valuation, but I don't anymore, and I haven't for quite a while, and brokerage. And what we're going to talk about is what is the relationship between all of those? What are those connection points? What's really going on in the ag space where we're at today that makes it unique, makes it such a unique opportunity? So when I was working for Mr. Williams, was the epiphany. This is the big moment. So I had, these degrees and stuff, and feeling knowledgeable, well-educated, so I guess that means that I should have been making a lot of money. But I worked for Bob, and he put me in front of, talk about old technology. We were doing a consultation across Arizona and Nevada. He put me in front of a microfiche reader. Now, who knows what a microfiche reader is? This is my audience. I love it. So I sat in front of this thing for 2 months, 10 hours, 8 hours a day. Come on, 10 hours a day. My eyes are shot. I'm bleary. Well, after 2 months, I went up to Bob. Kurt, you'll remember Bob. He was about 5'8", about 240 pounds, bull rider out of the University of Wyoming, cowboy from California, thick as a stump, great temper in the right way, beautiful blue eyes that would pierce right through you. And I finally got a little upset. I'm German. I went out and I said, Bob, this isn't going to work anymore. He said, what do you mean? I said, Bob, this is not going to work anymore. I said, I've got all these credentials, and I'm sitting in front of a microfiche reader. I said, Bob, you could have hired a frickin' chimpanzee to do this. Bob pauses, and he looks up, and he looks at me, and he goes, I think I have. That was a pivotal point in my life. So what ultimately happened, I joined ASFMRA, and all of that's interesting, I guess. But my perspective, I came out of UCSD, and I studied ecology in graduate school. So I'm looking at the real estate industry, and I said, there's a better way to do what we're doing. This is crazy. This is insane. I'm in a microfiche machine, and I'm writing this stuff down. I mean, look, at that point in time, we were just coming out with DOS. So we were taking a lot of notes. I have all my old forms. When you do farms, you fill them all out. We're all familiar with that, or a lot of you are familiar. Some of you have no idea what I'm talking about. But I said, there's got to be a better way. So my passion, my vision for 35 years has been to, how do we change this industry? And then why? I said, I don't want any professional to do what I did, because it's about highest and best use. That wasn't my highest and best use. So let's talk about that a little bit. And then the other thing is, I should mention, I was the land practice leader at Cushman & Wakefield for 12 years on the national level. And then I did the same thing at CBRE. So a lot of the deals that I've worked on, I'm still under NDAs. And so I have to be very, very careful. I can't describe people or even really identify the properties, but I can give you some ideas. So the first thing before we talk about maybe a couple of those is this. We have to recognize that real estate, particularly agricultural real estate, it is an industry where people matter at a higher level than any other segment of the real estate world. This is why. We're part of the land. And when you're dealing with people who are part of the land, you're dealing with personalities. And if you understand market value definition, that's a man-made definition that's based upon personality, and it's based upon the behavior of human beings. Fair market value, not motivated, willing buyer, willing seller, et cetera. So the first thing is, there's no small transaction. That transaction, that $1 million transaction to a family who owns 20 acres somewhere, and I think California, where our range of value is anywhere from for good arable farmland, I sold a deal a year ago, $80,000 an acre for 100 acres. So that's an $8 million deal. That sounds like a big, that's a big deal. $8 million, I don't care who you are, that's a big deal. But also to the person next door who owns that 5-acre piece, and they're doing, some specialty crops or whatever, that's the biggest deal they may ever do. So the size of the deal can be measured in acres or it can be measured in dollars. My focus is usually in deals that are from $10 million and up. So we've got a couple of listings now in the $20 and $30 million range, and a couple we're looking at in some consulting assignments in the, $30 to $80 million range. But kind of for fun, the biggest deal that I was part of a team on I was helped facilitate. We were just talking about it at break. $2.3 billion, and it was, what did we figure? It was 4,000 square miles, 1.3 million acres, I think it was. No, we were at 2.3 million acres. So, yeah. So it was huge. It was huge. But here's the great thing about that was, of course, we assembled a team.
I think so. Maybe it was like 2.3 or 2.4 million acres.
No different than what I would do for a 20-acre farm. The soils, the capability for wind generation, the mineral rights that were incumbent to this property. Is there water available? Coarse soils. Locational characteristics, availability of utilities. Now, when you're looking at 5,000 square miles, every part of the ranch is going to be different. But the due diligence is the same. And now, finally, we're at a point in this industry where we can pull the same due diligence together for that 20-acre piece as you can for that massive piece. So I think the great thing, and thanks, Michael, is that, it's all the same. Whether it's big or little, sure, that client is going to be expecting a level of responsiveness that it might be a little bit more than another buyer or seller, but not as much as you might think. The ag business is still done face-to-face. There's always a point person. There's always somebody. I just got a call from a major lender, and we're struggling to sell this property. Major lender, one of the big 5 ag lenders in the U.S., and I'm talking to a human being. I'm not talking to a committee. I don't want to talk to a committee. Rule by committee is disaster every single time. But you're still dealing with an individual. And I think that's a really important distinction within the ag space. Are you bringing the best tools to bear, your best knowledge, to that deal, because it's important to everybody, whether it's $2.3 billion or $1 million.
And you mentioned some of these large lenders. I know there's lenders and institutions all around the country, and which banks that you're working with on a consulting basis as well. What type of... And you mentioned some of these large lenders, and I know there's lenders and institutions all around the country and large banks that you're working with on a consulting basis as well.
Sure, what
type
question.
Of questions and behavior are you seeing and hearing from some of these large clients that are looking at
their due
agriculture
diligence is you're looking at an ROI. You're looking at a return on investment. Now let's talk about what that really means. For that investor, and I can name some of them, Zurich, Ernst & Young, whatnot. 2 things become really important in determining that ROI. One, most of the time they don't have a clue. They do not know what they're talking about. Right? They just don't know. So you may have a young analyst or a Harvard MBA or somebody out of New York or Wall Street, and Philippe, I'm looking right at you because you know exactly what I'm going to be saying. They ask the stupidest questions I've ever heard in my life, like, what? I mean, and how did you get this job? And how much are you making? Right? When we analyze then ROI, and I'll get back on point here, they're going to look at the sustainability and durability of that income stream if they're looking at an income stream. If there's not an income stream, they're looking at exit. So you're really looking at, this is fundamental, they're looking at that income stream and they're looking at exit, reversion. So if there's great upside potential, then they will be weighing the exit more than the income stream. If they're looking at income, they're going to weigh the income more than the reversion. So what we're seeing, and I work with NACREF, which is the National Consortium of Real Estate Investment Fiduciaries. That's pretty good. I got it right. I think they just changed the last name, but I don't know. And I help write the valuation guidelines, even though I'm a broker, because I said these are the things we need to see. What do they need to see? Great due diligence. They want to see absolute transparency. They want to see, well, with them, maybe not everybody else, they want to be not coddled, but they need to know the truth. They have to underwrite this stuff quickly. They need to know whether it's something they're going to take or pass on. So I've worked on at least 3 consultation assignments on anything from 20,000 acres to, national acquisitions over the last few years. And those are all consultation assignments that led to a transactional brokerage assignment. But they wanted to see the same things in every instance, but most importantly, they wanted somebody on the ground who knew what in the world they were doing. So I'm telling you, until you look at a farm or a ranch or a property, you can look at all the aerials you want, and I use all those tools. They're very important. I take my electronics into the field, and many times the landowner thinks he owns something that he doesn't, and I have to point it out to them that you really don't own that. And so we use all those tools, but the important thing there is you've got to ground truth it. Old Bob Williams, he's gone now, but he said, you know what, if it doesn't ring true, it ain't true. So you have to trust your human instincts. When something doesn't feel right, it's not right. And you can't do that from an office.
So you've worked with many institutional buyers and individual buyers. How much of the diligence is done behind a computer looking at Excel sheets and tools like Acres compared to the ground? So you've worked with many institutional buyers and individual buyers. How much of the diligence is done behind a computer looking at Excel sheets and tools like Acres compared to the ground check,
not really.
the verification in the actual field? And do you see a difference in the different personas, the institutional versus the individual buyer, in how they approach that
What
diligence?
they want to see as a deliverable might be a whole lot more, but my workup is going to be 80% the same. Because for us to underwrite correctly, to put a price on something, I've got to have all that same data. So their expectations are much greater. But my work is pretty much the same. Obviously, we're not going to put the same amount of investment into a $10 million deal as you would maybe a $100 million deal. But the workup is pretty much the same. But I'll tell you what they do want. You're their eyes and ears. You've got to report back to them and tell them what you see. There's a fiduciary responsibility as a consultant or a broker. You're their eyes and ears. So if you see something, you got to let them know.
So you mentioned they want someone on the ground. They want that ground check. And
Yes.
A lot of times that's you. What are the pieces that you can't do behind the screen? What are the pieces that, like you said, you're bringing your tools and technology? You mentioned they want someone on the ground. They want that ground check. And a lot of times that's you. What are the pieces that you can't do behind the screen?
Mapping is
What are the
wonderful.
pieces that, like you said, you're bringing your tools and your
those
technology
things
out there. What is
we
it that you
do
still need
when I'm
that
in
ground
the
check
field,
to verify?
I've got all those
That
tools
they
with
need
me.
you
And
as the eyes and ears.
usually on my iPad. Okay? What they can't do, look, when you grow up in the business, you walk around and you look at the dirt and you pick that dirt up and you smell it and you crumble it. Or you see something like, criminy, that might flood or whatever. Nothing replaces experience. Nothing. So it's in your mind, your intellectual mind, your right brain mind, or is it left brain? I think it's right brain. Is it all ringing true? And if it's not ringing true, then something's wrong. And if something's wrong, you got to figure it out. You've got to let them know. Because remember, just like with our platform here, But with every major REIT or private REIT or family office or whatever it might be, you are responsible for letting them know what's going on. And if you blow it, somebody's going to lose money. Recently I looked at a portfolio that was going to market, and I declined to take it because I said, I don't think you're telling the truth. We tell the truth for a living. Well, that's an amazing thing. Now, we have to be diplomatic and careful, and we have to fulfill our fiduciary responsibilities. But at the end of the day, we tell the truth for a living. So that integrity throughout the organization, to the clients, to the industry, is critically important.
And I want to, we spent a lot of time looking back on the evolution of land transactions, but I want to talk a little bit about, you've been at the forefront of this industry for many years. What do you see? And I want to, we spent a lot of time looking back on the evolution of land transactions, but I want to talk a little bit about, you've been at the forefront of this industry for many years. What
That's
do
a
good
see question. I was, Wade, are you still here?
What do you see
Silver Lake Farms?
as the next frontier, the next tools,
so
the next evolutions?
It was funny. I
land
was flying out on the
transactions?
plane, and he sat next to me, and we were talking about ag, and he was looking over my shoulder, and we struck up a conversation. And he's a CFO for a firm, and lo and behold, he was coming here. So this is what I'm seeing. I'm seeing, due to COVID and a few other things, we're getting back to some human characteristics that we've lost for a while. And I have a remarkable, I don't know if anybody knows what this is, it's a digital electronic writing pad. So all of a sudden, what I'm seeing is that there's a return to those tools, the mind-body connection. We're returning to a human interaction, heavily supplemented with all the tools that we have. So what we're going to be seeing in the future is a complete integration of an amazing amount of technology and human touch. You know what, my most powerful tool right now, my most powerful tool is a telephone. It's not email, it's not text, it's the telephone. It's like people go, who's this? I go, it's Matt, we need to talk. We are reintroducing, in my opinion, the human element into the transactional world, heavily supplemented and integrated with technology. That's what I see. I also think we're going to be seeing holography introduced, virtual holograms. Yeah, I could be here as a holographic image, or you could be interviewing, so on a website.
Holograms?
Yeah.
But how does that impact land transactions?
You bet. So if I can put a buyer or seller,
I've seen that with
or they have the
Tupac,
capability,
but coming
right
back
now,
on stage.
maybe in 5 years,
But how
it'll be sooner than
does
you
that
think.
impact land transactions?
And you have a real image of the person, but it's live. It's not like a video. They're there. The body language, the inflection. We learned something in life. The first impression is in the first 10 seconds. You can only do it once. You can only do it once. And having that ability, remember, a lot of people are visual learners, to see that person, to see their expression, to see somebody who's animated kind of like I am, it tells a story, and it's an important story. Body language is 70-80% of the deal, of the interaction. So that becomes really important, and there'll be more.
I think we have just a couple minutes left. Do we want to open up for do we have time for one or two questions? Okay. Are there any questions for Matt? And I think we have
I'm going to close then
a
with
couple
this,
minutes
because I
left.
know
Do
we're
we
on
wanna
a tight
open up
time
for
frame. Now,
one or- do we have time for one or two questions?
I'm going to stop.
Okay.
I'm going to stop if no one knows what I'm talking about. Any John Wayne fans out there?
Okay.
Yeah. Do you remember Big Jake, the movie? Do you remember what was said throughout the whole movie? Do you remember the one-liner? Who said that? I thought you were dead. So John, I reflected on that when I walked into the lobby and I saw Kurt, and he looks at me and he said, I thought you retired. And then I've had 2 or 3 people who I've known over the years come up to me and go, I thought you retired. What did John Wayne say? Not hardly. So you guys, you're going to be stuck with my antics for at least the next 20 years. So it's a humbling pleasure, sincerely, to be here. To leave CBRE and come to an environment where we can fulfill, not our destiny, that's a little heavy, but when we can fulfill our life goal, and a success in life is the incremental movement toward a worthy goal. And that's what is happening. So, and we see it across the whole industry. We provide the food of the world, and we provide national security for the United States. What we do is probably the most impactful thing in the world. People can fight. People look at the Ukraine. We can look at all of this. But at the end of the day, everybody's got to eat, right? So what you do, what all of you are involved in, is critically important, and I applaud all of you for that. So thank you.
Thank you, Matt.